Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
Henrik. Hey man, how's it going?
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
This is a really weird place. I have no idea what this is.
It's a mental health clinic.
Oh!
It's mainly based on 10th floor, so there isn't like logos and stuff down here. It's just offices that are...
Hopefully the drilling won't seep into the audio.
It sounds like it's above, so going to the 10th floor.
Well, look, we met,
Yeah.
and then it's just part of the hilarious sort of...
Yeah, I thought about that.
No, why are you saying sorry?
Oh yeah, you hate the word sorry.
No, it's fine. Here's what's really interesting. I have so many questions, but I can't ask them. Fuck. Okay, no problem. Oh, you know what? Look, it's what the universe wants.
I guess photography doesn't actually mean a lot to me over what it means to I think most people. It doesn't have any special meaning for me. It's not one of the art forms I consume the most. It's not one I produce almost at all. I haven't even really taken my shot at it and failed or anything. I like it, but it's not. I think my favorite form of photography is just family photos and old photos that trigger nostalgia in your mind. That's the main function of photography in my life. As an art form, I don't end up engaging with it that much, to be honest. Although when I see a good photograph, I love them. I like them in the same way. I know they have power, and I know that a lot goes into the composition and nature of them. But it's I guess it'd be certain other types of art that just aren't my thing, right? On the far end of that spectrum, I think is music. I don't really understand. I love music, but I am borderline tone deaf and musically incompetent. I guess I feel a little bit the same about photography. Whereas I know a lot of people engage on it with some spiritual level or something deep, or it's really profound for them. I'm at the baseline.
Henrik Hoeg. How do I say your name?
That was pretty good. Henrik Hoeg.
Henrik Hoeg? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so with a name like that, with a face like that, you look like you should be on the Vikings show.
Oh,
you
thank
you. Very handsome guy.
Ah, shucks.
Yes, look, take it. So,
That wasn't always the case, and I'm still not sure I'll accept it's the case now.
What?
But
You're crazy.
I kept my little baby fat until I was 27 or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It's cute in a different way, but
No, dude. Listen. All I can tell you is what I see in front of me.
You know what the magic is? It's getting your significant other who has taste in clothes and haircuts and stuff to start dressing you and telling you what works. I never got hit on until I basically got married or started dating my current wife, who was you should wear this, not that.
Let's fix you up.
Those jeans are so baggy, you look like you're in a 90s hip hop group. That doesn't work. That helped immensely.
Sweet. Okay, look. Originally we met at your office, hoping to record.
Yeah, that didn't go so well.
Yeah. Well, when I first got here, somebody told me that the Hong Kong bird is a jackhammer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because that's what you hear.
I get it. It's a good joke. I like that.
And then I thought, okay, let's record somewhere else. Where does the universe want us to record? And right now we're recording. We're sitting outside. Hopefully it won't rain. It's super loud around us.
Yeah.
That massive rumbling is a ferry.
That's probably the DB ferry coming in. Yeah.
We may have helicopters. We may have.
True that. They land over there.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll just do it.
We'll make it work.
What it is.
We'll make it work.
It is what it is. First photo?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
I haven't looked.
I haven't looked in since I sent them. So
well, I have them here, and I'll show them.
Go for it. Yeah. That first photo. Yeah. That is a photo of me at an open mic reading, very early days, for at least me and my involvement in the poetry community in Hong Kong. That's at a club called Orange Peel that no longer exists, actually, where we were running Peel Street Poetry at the time. And yeah, I guess because I wanted to talk about poetry and my involvement in poetry here, and I do these kinds of things because I hope to drive more people to the poetry community.
Oh wow, yeah.
That's kind of the main reason. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I figured we'd start there.
Great.
And I looked through.
Let me describe the image so people are listening.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're in a club of sorts. You're nicely dressed. This must have been after.
Definitely was after looking at it. Yeah.
So you're standing at a mic. You're holding up a printout. You're gesturing with your right hand. Behind you is this. It's a really beautiful bar scene. Like you can just see a drum kit on the bottom. It's quite dark. Most of it is in shadow, but the spotlight's on you.
Real jazz club vibes.
Yeah,
it was a jazz club.
Yeah, so you're surrounded by musician paraphernalia. You can just sort of see people in the shadows, blurred. It's a fantastic photo. It's a great photo.
Yeah, it's a good photo.
It's looking very, very good. And look, we'll probably get into my overlap with spoken word poetry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course. But yeah, so
what is your overlap? Have we done it? I don't know if I know what your overlap.
We don't know
each
other, so we'll figure it out. Okay, but so why start with this photo? And you wanted to?
Yeah, I think it was the earliest one I could find of me at a poetry reading in Hong Kong that fit the resolution you were looking for. I think it might have been one of the earliest ones I could find at all, which is interesting because it's the third venue that Peel Street moved through while I was there.
Okay.
So Peel Street started 17 years ago, and I wasn't involved at this point, at a bar called Joyce Is Not Here. Mm-hmm. It was on Peel Street, hence Peel Street Poetry. And around, I'm going to say 10 or 11 years ago, a friend brought me along, and Joyce Is Not Here was a very small little hole-in-the-wall type venue. And they used to have a sign outside that said like sad hours for poets, and that was what they put up for this open mic thing that slowly developed. And, the first time I came in, I think there was like 6 people. And that was a regular night for them back then. It was like 6 to 10.
Yeah. And
eventually Joyce Is Not Here closed, and we moved across the street to a place called Peel Fresco that I believe is still there. Okay. It's still a music place. And after being there for about a year, the MC at the time, a guy called Akin JJ, who I think you saw perform at my launch the other day, he had his first kid, and he was like, I can't really MC anymore. And I think I was the person who was most regularly attending. So he asked me if I would MC. So I started MCing these poetry nights. And back then we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have anything going on, and we were still getting kind of 10 people on a very good night. So I got us into some of that, started growing, and Peel Fresco wanted to go more down the musical route, and they asked us if we could find another venue, and we found Orange Peel, which was in the middle of Lang Kwai Fung. But because it was called Orange Peel, even though we were leaving Peel Street, we kept the Peel Street name, because there was still like a peel in the, I don't know what the logic was, but this is how we ended up stuck with Peel Street, even though 10 years later we've twice moved to different streets that are not Peel Street. We spent a good 2-3 years at Orange Peel. Beautiful venue, but there's, I don't actually know the details of the collapse, but there was something with like them not paying rent or something real sketchy was going on, and the whole place closes down. So this is from that. And then we moved to Social Room, which is that wonderful venue you saw the other day, where we've been for 6 years, maybe 5 years, something.
Oh, wow.
Social Room's been amazing. It's just been so great.
You're amazing. Because, I mean, like, you're doing this all these years. Like, that's some serious conviction, tenacity, dedication.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it wasn't hard. Like, I enjoyed it. It was like, and it's, you know, you go once a week. Oh, well, it's on every Wednesday except the first Wednesday of the month. So a little bit less than once a week on average.
Wow.
Which, is actually quite a lot for an open mic. But it's, I don't know, it's one of those, I am an introvert in the kind of current sense where people are like, you need to recharge away, then you go spend your energy in social situations. But Peel Street has become so homely, or such part of my life, that it's like a place where I recharge, even though obviously it's very extroverted seeming to get on the mic and introduce people and talk about poetry. But no, I leave there like refreshed. So it's very easy. Whereas like I'll go to a normal party or networking thing or whatever Hong Kong does, and like I'll be exhausted after 2 hours of small talk. But
okay, you're speaking about things that you're impassioned about. Okay, so the podcast is all about, you know, how do we make sense of our lives? How do we make every second count? We know each other I meet you, reach out, come out with this book. Quickly, what's the title of the book?
It's called Birth is the Coward's Way In.
Yes, the best title. I mean, so how did that title come to you? Or is it just the name of a poem?
So the way I write poems is I think of one-off lines randomly, and I put them in a Google Note sheet I have, and they tend to be things like that are just, you know, taking a phrase and flipping some part of it, and I must have somewhere seen like the phrase "death is the coward's way out" or something, and just been like, how can I make this a little weirder? How can I make it apply to everyone?
Sure.
And that was it. And so I'd written it down somewhere. And the title I was previously throwing around for the book was Fetishizing the Mundane, which became one of the chapter titles, which is a line from my first book about how to write poetry. And at some point, I just wasn't in love with that title anymore, and I found this note, Birth is the Coward's Way In, and I was like, that's it, that's the one.
Is that the way we open the door to you reading one of your poems?
Could be. So what I was thinking was I would read the first poem I ever read going to an open mic. So, because I noticed one of the things you say about the podcast is, how can we make every second count? And that's a sentiment I hear a lot, but I don't know if I agree with.
Okay.
And I think I often poke fun at similar things. A lot of my poetry is satirical. And Hong Kong often likes its kind of either hustle culture, you know, either every second counts, or in the wellness space, every second counts, or stuff like that I think is often ripe for satire. So this was about the idea of like trying to force happiness, or trying to find out a way to be happy, or trying to sell a product that makes you happy, and that sort of not being the path to happiness without having an answer for what the path is. So it's called Don't Move to Finland. If you want to be happy, think hard about meditating. If you want to be happy, eschew materialism with a minimalist decor in your condominium. If you want to be happy, chase the fuck out of happiness. If you want to be happy, make happiness your goal and scream, I will not be happy until I have happiness. If you want to be happy, be handsome and charismatic and sexually exceptional. If you want to be happy, be at the better end of bell curves that map happiness in your demographic. If you want to be happy, masturbate, or don't, whatever makes you happy. If you want to be happy, assume happiness and work backwards. I know you want to be happy, but stop hogging all the happiness. Don't move to Finland.
Let's just wait for the helicopter to go.
Yeah, back to China.
It's very strange with the helicopters and recording outside and the heavy sky and the IFC. It's spectacular. Okay, next photo.
So also this place, so during the pandemic when you weren't even allowed to like gather outside in groups of two, this was a place where people would go and drink, like a little bit down there, more up here. And then I remember, because I was living in Saigon at the time, so we would come drink here. And there would be like 200 people here.
Right.
And as soon as a cop would come up those stairs, everyone would split off into exact groups of two. And the cops would just walk around.
Are you two? Or are you three? Are you two? Or are you three? I love it.
For a while, they would come out walking with these giant signs or with like little boom boxes that were like, you must not gather in groups of three. And just so weird.
That's funny. In this image, this is it. So it's
2 books.
It's 2 books. Okay. So
it's my first and second book.
Okay, so it's a image rendition of 2 covers.
Yep.
The one on the left says irreverent poems for pretentious people.
That was the first book. So I almost think I like that title better than the title of my third book. That one really set it all for me.
No, I love it. And then the one next to it is Away with Words. Not away, not away with words, but away with words.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
I love it. Yeah. Poems and translations.
Oh yeah, so for the second book I took some contemporary Danish poets. I went to like a couple open mics there.
Okay.
I made some connections. I reached out to them and I was like, send me a poem.
Okay.
And so I translated some of them into English, which was fun.
Right. Okay.
And this happened because I listened to a poem at an open mic in Denmark, and 2 words that rhymed in Danish I had like the perfect English translation for, and it was something about elephants walking, and like the words in Danish rhymed, and it's like it's so chancy, but perambulate, which is an English word for walk, rhymes perfectly with whatever it was, and hits the same cadence. And I was like, oh, it'd be fun to actually translate the whole poem. And then I did that, and then I was like, this is cool. Why don't I have like 10 translations in the book as well?
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a fun little project.
Nice. Away with words.
Yeah.
Away with words. And then, so the cover of Irreverent Poems for Pretentious People is basically the top half is sort of pink and the bottom is this green, which I don't know if it kind of reminds me of one of those visual illusion things that when you look at it, that the inside would make the green and the pink flip and it would look the same. But in the middle is actually an old style typewriter.
I was looking for the most pretentious object possible to put on the front.
A typewriter is the most
Typewriter's
pretentious?
up there, yeah.
Yeah?
I think it's pretty high up there.
Okay.
Someone,
Oh, especially for a writer and whatever.
Yeah. If in current times you saw someone sitting with a typewriter at Starbucks, you're not thinking, there's the next Hemingway. You're thinking, that guy is an asshole.
Douche.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, what's the most pretentious object I can put on there?
Okay. So I have to ask you, why?
Because it related sort of to the content in my mind.
No, but why these 2 covers?
Okay. So the first, I designed them both.
Nice.
Unlike my third book, where the third cover is better, is designed by a guy called KLR Covers.
Okay.
The first book was published through a company called Proverse. They do some publishing in Hong Kong, although they have their issues, but it's like the only place that publishes poetry.
Yeah.
So for a lot of young poets in Hong Kong who come to Peel or write their first book in English, there's this tension. Do I publish with Proverse, despite all the crap I hear, or do I hold out for something else to pop up, or do I self-publish?
Yeah.
And poetry is a pretty pretentious and slightly elitist art form in some ways, so like self-publishing is looked down on by certainly everyone in the academic space, if not just a lot of people in general. Which is very silly, is hopefully changing, but I don't see it changing very quickly. So after publishing with Proverse for the first one, I was like, I'm never doing that again.
Okay.
So I self-published the second one.
Okay.
Which led actually to the third one sort of is technically not self-published because I started a publishing company.
Oh, nice.
So my hope is to maybe publish other people's works depending on how it goes. So that's Trivial Disaster Publishing. And with this first one going well, I had a couple of people approach me and be like,
I love your aesthetic. Trivial Disaster Publishing.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's a little ice cream cone upside down.
Nice.
The most trivial disaster of them all.
On the floor, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here comes the helicopter. Hopefully it won't be too loud.
So with this, I was thinking, when you write books, I think there's a honeymoon phase, which I'm currently in with the third book. And then there's a phase later where you look back and you think it's all crap.
Yep.
It just happens. Like I look back at the second book and I really dislike the title.
Yeah.
I look back at the first book and there's some poems in there that were just not.
Well, you've outlived.
Yeah. But I was going to read one from the first, then one from the second. And the one from the first, I think, is probably the strongest piece in there, and the one that has stood the test of time the best.
Okay.
So let me find that one.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. It's called To Stand Watch. And it's about this idea of like, there's a notion that as you get old, you get more conservative. And it's about not wanting to do that, but also the inevitability of it, but also how it's maybe a good thing because you get replaced. You know? It's just. To stand watch. When I'm 65, I hope to stand on the ramparts of a castle built on the convictions and struggles of my generation. Gender equality, gay rights, social responsibility, brick after brick in meticulous construct, laid with passion-fired labor, aged to be the edifice of a new safe conservatism. I hope to stand on the ramparts and look out and see campfires of youth, burning in the distance, speaking of new ideas around fires stoked on new kindling. When they storm the castle, I shall put up fighting words enough to test the metal of their sincerity. And when their ladders reach in the gaps in the structure's crenellation, I hope to step up undaunted. As I am run through at spear point, I hope to bleed gladly and pull myself by the haft of the spear closer to the youth who takes me for his enemy, close enough that I may whisper, "Thank you." So it's about the idea of sort of being, I guess, grateful for people who will inevitably come up with better ideas than you.
Yeah.
And it being okay that you're seen as sort of the old guard.
Yeah, right.
And you get a lot of people like that at poetry who are these older but very supportive of the youth type characters, and it's really good to see.
So where did this come up in your head?
For this poem specifically?
No, just in general.
I have no idea. I always liked poetry, and I think at some point in high school, I studied English Lit to the end of high school, and it was probably my favorite subject.
Oh, wow.
And then at some point in university, I went to the Philosophy Society, and they had like an open mic poetry night. I found it very fun, and I just kind of stored that in the back of my mind, like, this is fun.
Yeah.
I had random notes, you'd make when you're not paying attention in class and stuff. And then kind of nothing happened until I went to Peel Street Poetry years later.
Wow.
But yeah, there's not this, I don't know what the answer is to that. Like, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, the only way to be a writer is to be one of those people that just has to write.
Right.
Which I hope isn't true.
Well, okay. My response to that is, if that's how you got to writing, and that is to think that's the only way, then that's the only way for you. And for me, it's all about like, well, there's different paths to there's evidence that people get to writing through different paths, and kind of like whatever works, whatever floats your boat, really.
Yeah, I agree, and it's because I run an open mic, so I kind of have to think like that, right? People come in from all angles, right? In fact, some of the most interesting people to hear are the ones who are like leaving these high-powered board meetings where they're just like, this was so dumb, so I wrote a poem about it. And, like, those poems end up hilarious.
Yeah. So my first degree was in creative writing, and I did a lot of like spoken word, poetry.
Oh yeah, because you told me about the group. Yes, I remember now. Yeah.
And so, for example, when you say, oh, it's kind of elitist, and and it's that whole thing of poetry is dead, long live poetry, right? And so it's probably the most worthless thing you could do is to sit and write poetry, right? In a way, because it's not like poetry books sell by the hundreds of thousands or millions, right?
Oh, they don't sell at all.
Yeah. So
you straight up, no matter how good I think you are, if you were in this context in Hong Kong or whatever, I don't think you could make money.
You couldn't make a living. No
way.
No, there's no way. No.
Yeah, and it's a weird little time in poetry, I think, as well, with social media and the way things go. The only poets that I know of that are like sort of hitting it big in some sense are like the Rupi Kaurs of the world. If do you know who she is? She has a book called Milk and Honey, I think, which is the best-selling poetry book of the last 10 years or whatever. And I brought it up. I was like, oh, I should definitely read this. I don't actually read a lot of poetry, but I was like, I was hearing about this.
Right.
And man, they're really not for me. They're essentially like 10-word poems on average. They're like tweets. They're like tweets about breakups.
Right.
And they're so often just built around the same structure of like taking a semi-normal phrase and then sort of flipping it. Like, we said goodbye and so long. Why did we say goodbye for so long?
Right.
End of poem. Like, just not for me.
Okay, that's it. It's not for you, and that kind of reminds me of that movie of the with the like the superhero, the not superheroes, like something men, some mystery men maybe or something, where like Mr. Mysterio, who would just sort of he'd say something and he'd just sort of flip it backwards to make it sound mysterious, and you're like, okay.
Yeah. And that is an effect that can like work in places, and I think it's a little bit like swearing in poetry. You have to use it in a very limited amount for it to have an impact.
Right.
Or in a super excessive amount.
Yeah.
You either say fuck once or you say it 70 times.
Yeah.
In the middle.
On that,
A helicopter will interrupt your poem.
Fuck! Helicopter! Fucking helicopter!
Poetry is a lot like the rotary blades of a helicopter. Poetry is a lot like the rotary blades of that stupid helicopter. And I am the stabilizing thingy at the back.
That's great. So it's, in a way, it's the most useless thing, and it could be self-indulgent and all this stuff, and yet fundamentally, living in Hong Kong, one of my clients got me to do an MBA.
Yeah.
Of all the things, of all the subjects, maybe religious studies is the least attractive to me, and MBA to me is the really like.
I would totally do religious studies or theology. Yeah, I mean, it's very useless in that sense, but it's the most useless thing in the world, but it's just as useless as everything else.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, nothing has any intrinsic value.
Sure, there we go.
So
nice.
You know, it's not like banking or like.
No, it's not utilitarian, which I think was what makes it great.
Yes, but nor is banking. But I guess it's just, I don't know. I would say I'm a nihilist.
Yeah.
Which maybe makes it easier to see the value in poetry, because there is no value in poetry or anything else unless you place it there yourself, and even then there isn't.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like a castle built on sand. You can build it again. Oh, I value it. But I know that there's no such thing as value, but I value it.
So here's something. I love the fact that you have this philosophical channel, vein, branch in your head. So, okay. Chat GPT, like cat I farted. Because you heard this? Like
no.
Chat GPT, right?
I know Chat GPT.
Okay, so if you say cat, if you read Chat GPT in French, Chat GPT, it means cat I farted.
That's
so
funny.
Whenever I talk about it, I always say cat I farted.
Okay.
Anyway, so I got access to it.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, let's see what this is like. So I basically said, compose a poem on the theme of poetry is dead, long live poetry.
Okay.
And it literally took 30 seconds, boom. It was like it was in rhyming couplets or whatever. It was like 15 lines long. And then I said, translate it into Hungarian. So translate it to Hungarian. I should have translated it into Danish.
That would be funny, yeah.
So, given who you are and how you think, and open mic nights, and how do you interpret that little sentence of having a AI generate poetry?
Yeah, I love it. I'm great with it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd also consider myself a transhumanist. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's awesome. I think it's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to see where it goes. Yeah, I think maybe it's also interesting. Like, we're like, look, isn't it crazy that the AI can do this?
Right.
And I think I'm sometimes kind of thinking, isn't it interesting that humans can't do that? Like that, that prompt you said it, I think most humans couldn't do that.
Right.
Right? Like, does that, if we're saying, by the virtue of it being able to do this, it's intelligent.
No.
But the tasks we're setting it are already things that 99% of people can't do.
Right.
What does that say about us? Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. I think the translation element will also be especially interesting. There's a, do you know the poem Jabberwocky?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jabberwocky, I think I first came across it, or the idea of translating it, in the book Gödel Bach, which is also a book I really like. And the problem with translating it is because it's written in fake English, where words are meant to sound like other words, right? So instead of saying like it was brilliant, he says it was brillig, and it's like softer than brilliant somehow, and you get a sense for it. So when you translate it to French, you need a word that instead of connoting the English words, connotes these other French words instead. So
nice.
it's really complicated translation.
Yeah.
And if you read it in French and German, it sounds the same, but it sounds different. Like certain parts sound much harsher because it's German.
Right.
And that's like, I'm very interested in where it goes with problems that are kind of semi-impossible for humans. Like, how do you translate Jabberwocky into another language?
Okay. That's great.
But no, I gotta get access to it. I have to set up a VPN and do it. I'm very excited.
Right. Because you said you have to set up a VPN and you're very excited, we're going to use that to go into the next photo.
Okay, I thought you were going to say we're going to use that to contact our sponsor, NordVPN.
I wish. Oh, okay, so here is a beautiful photo. Is that your dog?
That's my dog, one of my two dogs.
Okay.
That's a Ripley.
Ripley, good name. Seated on a bed, I would say.
Yep.
Not the sofa, seated on the bed. Between, or in front of his legs in the foreground is the book. Birth is the Coward's Way In. Talk to me. Is it about dogs or is it about book? Like why?
I just figured sending you too many pictures of just books would be boring eventually, so I've got my dog in the picture.
Okay. Why Ripley?
Why the name Ripley?
Yeah.
Well, it's after Sigourney Weaver in Alien.
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah. So she was a female Mongol, and like she had kind of a standoffish attitude when we first got her. Like,
Okay.
I don't need you guys.
Yeah.
And she got ready to adopt
Awesome.
her.
Awesome.
She was eating our food. She's like, I can survive in the wild, and she had survived in the wild. So we needed like a strong female lead,
awesome.
and in a lot of ways, Sigourney Weaver was like the first in that attacked. So yeah, it
That's
was
great.
a good fit. So
That's
she became
great.
Ripley.
Okay.
And yeah, she's a good little dog. She's still a little weird, little stand-up. No,
Yeah,
she's gotten better, but
Nice.
she's got personality. That's for sure.
Nice. So I think because of my training in poetics and art and everything, I do see everything as a symbol, right? And that even if you're just like even if you randomly in your head pick 4 photos, you thought, I don't know, whatever, we'll just talk about this. The fact that that's photo number 3, the photo of Ripley with your book in front, is part of your narrative, right? And is symbolic, and there is like deep connection within that. So what's good for me is I get to learn what exactly created that moment that you would want to use that to talk about it.
I don't think it's as deep as you're gonna want it to
No,
be,
it's not
but-
one. I'm sure it is though.
So when the book first arrived, boxes from Amazon, and I realize now also the last image is going to be a poster for the book launch that's now already happened. So
That's great.
that'll be fine. So it arrives, and I'm hoping to get people to go to my book launch.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to promote it on social media and whatnot. And I have cute dogs, and people like dogs more than
Right.
they like book launches.
Yep.
So I take a picture of my dog with the book,
Yeah.
and I post that instead.
Nice.
It's purely a contrived mechanism to trick people into going to a book launch.
I was talking about the power of poetry, the power of writing, and the idea that when you're writing, in a way, so you know what mirror neurons are?
Yes, it's the idea that you'll have the same neurological pathway fire as someone you see based on your interpretation of their emotions. So if they're in pain, you will have a similar firing and can almost feel pain.
As if you, yeah. That's where kind of the idea being is maybe that's where empathy comes from.
Yeah.
So in a way, the task of the writer, knowing, like if we apply this idea of motor neurons, the task of the writer is to put together words that somehow fires empathically in a reader to kind of feel something or experience something.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think that's very the case in slam, an American style sort of spoken word,
Right.
where it is very, emotions are often the main character.
Okay.
In that I don't write as much that style. I mean, I have a few that try and sort of get at understanding and playing out emotion, but maybe not necessarily triggering it in other people. But I often play more with or rely more on the way that humor works than the way empathy works, which I think kind of the current understanding of how humor functions is it's setting up an expectation so that your neurological pathways are ready to fire, and then doing something unexpected or that subverts those expectations so that the confusion creates this effect we call humor.
I am so happy you said that. Okay, so I went to your book launch, and that was great. And then the next evening was another event, and it was more about the beat poets.
Yep. Yeah.
And I hear that somebody read Howl from Allen Ginsberg. I'm just going to line up all these things.
Absolutely.
Okay. Allen Ginsberg.
So three poets got together, split it up, and read almost, not quite the whole thing, because it is a long poem. But more.
So I saw Allen Ginsberg in Montreal at the university I was going to very soon before he died.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that he talked about that formed his aesthetics or formed his, his choices, and that what he thinks is important in art is he uses it by illustration with the words Nazi milk, right? So take the word Nazi, take the word milk, Nazi milk.
Yeah.
Two ideas that don't make sense together, and what that does, it's kind of like the comedic thing that you're saying, is it misfires. Like the listener goes, what? There's that weird sort of tension or gap that in humor makes a person laugh. Right.
That's also, I think, the thing that causes the struggle that most poets have when they're starting out or when you're young and trying to write, is that because you write in this very forced rhyme, as people get with your poem, it's going to go exactly where they think it goes.
Yep.
Because they're already expecting the next line. So you've taken out any element of like confusion or surprise or flipping meanings on their head.
Yep.
And that's why it ends up a little bit boring.
Okay.
But everyone has to go through that phase.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's always interesting to see the people they'll come and they'll read a poem of rhyming couplets about a breakup. It just seems to be the way to initiate yourself. And then like after a year of coming to poetry, they'll be reading something like totally whacked out and different. That's just super interesting. Love seeing that kind of develop.
Oh, nice. So, in terms of your writing, in terms of your evolution, right? So it's interesting that you're helping people in this very public sort of space deliver their poetry. But it's like to write a poem is a very private experience within your own little head. Hey there, buddy.
This cute little bird.
You're beautiful. I love these doves. They're so pretty.
So there's a bird here with a speckled neck.
Yeah, it's a dove. It's so beautiful.
It's a dove?
Yep. I think it's an Asian dove or something. Yeah, so in terms of like the writing exit moment is you sit in a room and you come to terms, or you kind of come to within your own self in terms of what motivation you want to write, and you try to put the words, or you kind of go with the feeling and you compile the words, and that's a different experience or a different process than doing an open mic where you're reading, which is more of a performance.
Yeah, I think it's also like the open mic for people that go there regularly and they write regularly serves as like a filter for your bad writing. You'll read, like, everyone has a moment where they read a poem and halfway through reading it on the mic they realize it's crap.
They're like bombing.
Yeah.
They're like, oh shit.
And it's not because their performance is crap, it's because when they read it in their own head they couldn't actually see that it wasn't saying what they wanted to say, or it wasn't, and then they go and edit it. And if that piece had never visited an open mic, it would have stayed as what it was. And then you also have the moment where the first time you really get an over-the-top response and you're like, that was amazing. That feeling is such a high.
Let's just wait for the helicopter to pass.
There's really quite a lot of helicopters.
Yeah, we're in Hong Kong.
Look, it's the same guy.
Just go back and forth, just like an audio
showing it off.
So as you were saying, before rudely interrupted.
So you go on the mic, and then that moment when you get a response that is more than just a normal clap, or is like, and like people out loud laughing, or like an intake of breath, or like, oh, that is when like sort of you know that you've written something that really is good and interesting, or has some value, if things have value. But I don't know if at the launch, do you remember Akin performing?
Yeah.
So that piece, granted, I really like it. I put it at the front of the book, like it's the opening piece. But he definitely read it better than I've ever read it.
Okay.
And right as he hit that last line, there was this audible intake of breath from the whole audience, and I was like, that was, I mean, I'm still riding that high a little bit.
Nice.
And so actually I went up and I read a poem rather than bring the next speaker on immediately, because it was like a bit of a tough act to follow.
Right.
And then if you notice, the next speaker got up and was like, oh, I was happy I didn't have to follow Atkins.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's also great that it's like a piece of music that somebody comes in and lends their own, not interpretation, but their own sort of magic or energy to it that helps.
Yeah. In an early draft of the third book, I had like one of the best examples of just how utterly subjective this is. I gave the draft of the book to two people, one of whom my interaction with is that he used to run a short story night. He reads a bunch of short stories, writes a bunch of short stories, and so the flash fiction in there, he could take a look at. They both looked at the whole book. And the other one, who is a poet in Hong Kong, and he's very good with rhyme and meter, but he's also he's very honest and critical.
Yeah.
So, I basically went and found my harshest critic.
Right.
On both sides. And the short story expert comes back to me and says, I'm not sure I like the short stories, but the poetry blew me away.
Right.
And the poetry expert comes back to me and says, we should work a lot on the poetry. It's not there, but the short stories were incredible.
Yeah.
And I just laughed.
Yeah.
It was I wonder if that comes a little bit from them. It's easier to critique the art you know a lot about, because you're just I would just change this little thing.
Yeah.
You're just that brush stroke.
Sure.
But then if you're not a painter, you're that's just cool.
Yeah, you can just sort of take it for what it is.
Take it for what it is, yeah.
Okay.
It's like seeing how the sausage is made,
Right.
I still eat sausage though.
Oh,
so,
okay.
But it ruins it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that is a perfect segue to the next last image. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Poor Ripley. We ended on sausage, and she's just hey. But here's the thing with what's interesting is that with the podcast, for example, with the episodes, the ones that have had the greatest reactions are the one by far of 150 episodes. The one that by far has had the highest response had these two cats.
It works. It works.
On the internet, cats rule the internet. Yeah. So just wait a second. What about the content?
Now I feel like I should have gotten my second dog instead of this image. So, well, this is the now dated image as the poster for the launch. So originally we were going to shoot the podcast right before.
Yeah.
But anyways, I guess it will serve as an image to tell people to come to Peel Street Poetry and to go buy the book, but more importantly, to come to Peel Street Poetry.
So so you do all the graphics design?
Yeah.
Okay. So
except for the book cover here.
Okay. So it's basically it's a digital, or it could be printed kind of poster presentation of a book launch. At the top four small, there's Peel Street Poetry logo, and then there's Hong Kong International Literary Festival. Then there's Trivial Disaster Publishing of the ice cream cone crashed onto the ground, which is just so great.
It's a great little logo. The same guy that did the cover for the book did that logo. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I really love it.
Trivial Disaster. I love it. And then there's the Hong Kong Social Room, the logo.
Which is our venue. Yeah.
Which is the venue. And then you've got the March 8th Social Room, Birth is the Coward's Way In. And you've got the cover of the book. Okay, So let's use this.
So you know what I can do instead is we have a couple of other events coming up. The one coming up this week is probably the podcast won't make it out in time, but there's the International Writers Workshop run by Baptist University. They're bringing some writers in.
Right.
They'll come to the open mic on Wednesday, which would be Wednesday the 15th.
So here's the thing with the podcast episodes is that they kind of live on.
Oh yeah,
right?
so that's
and so
last.
We're gonna
you're right.
And so, but it's also in a sense to make it more timeless or whatever is you have to kind of take, or you can take the sort of the longer view of.
Well, if I take the longer view, the truth is Peel Street Poetry has been going on for 17 years.
Oh,
will continue to go on.
17 years.
Yeah, 17 years. We had our 17th anniversary in November. So this coming November we'll have our 18th anniversary.
Wow.
Every anniversary we do a slam, but not in the, I guess, American sense of the word. Your slam, it's just a spoken word contest, I guess. We give people a prompt and they're given 10 minutes to write a poem on that prompt. It's either a single word or a phrase or a picture, something like that. Then they'll perform, and then one poet from each of the groups is picked to go into a final round, and then they'll do the same thing again. And then a winner is selected, and the finalist poems we try to get printed in somewhere, either in a zine we'll launch or in like a journal or something.
Okay.
But every Wednesday except the first Wednesday of each month, people can come to Social Room at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And there will be an open mic, either a normal open mic or some kind of event going on.
Got it.
And they should come check it out.
Nice. Now, what about you and how you tick does this do? Because in a way, it's like being an MC and running these things is a kind of like a social good. You know, it's like a community good. It's like a community service. You know, for the other weirdos in the world who kind of respond to this kind of thing, this is a kind of a gift where you dedicate all of this time to offering this platform for people who may be looking, who are hungry, who are whatever. It satisfies that. So this is very other-centric, right? So what now? I think I know what kind of work do you do? Because we're going to record at your thing. So what kind of work do you do?
Yeah, I generally work in special needs education.
Okay.
So my background is in mental health and in teaching dyslexic children.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I've worked in education in some form or another.
Okay. Now, you were born in Hong Kong, or you weren't born?
I moved here when I was 8. I was born in Denmark.
In Denmark,
Yeah,
okay.
so-
And that's why you sound so Danish.
So, I can't tell if you're joking. You think I sound Danish?
Totally.
Oh, I'm honored. I love.
Absolutely not. You totally sound
Okay,
American.
Jesus fuck. You got me.
What?
I was so excited for a second
You sound more French than you sound Danish.
because I love the way Danish people sound in English, like
Okay.
Viggo Mortensen and stuff.
Yeah.
Who's the other big one? The guy from History of Violence. I don't know, maybe that is Viggo Mortensen. But I would love to have that accent. But no, I went to the Canadian International School when I was very young and learned English there.
Right.
And so,
Which explains your American accent.
yeah, I think actually I mostly blame it on The Simpsons.
Okay.
I learned English watching The Simpsons.
Beautiful.
And playing a video game called Alpha Centauri.
Okay.
Do you know it?
No,
Do you know
also beautiful.
Civilization?
Yeah.
Okay. In Civilization, the game, one of the ways to win is to win the space race.
Okay.
Do you remember this?
No.
Okay. So Alpha Centauri was kind of based on the concept of, okay, if we win this way, humanity sends a spaceship off, it lands on Alpha Centauri,
Yeah.
and now we play Civilization but in space.
Okay.
And so you have these factions who all represented a different ideology. There was like the remnants of the UN, and they were like trying to keep peace. There's a religious faction, militaristic faction, environmental faction, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And every time you discover a technology, like in Civilization, a quote would come up, and they would read out this quote, and they were
Just hold on a second.
as
She's projecting.
she's projecting better than we do.
No. Just let her. Okay, go ahead.
And so every time you discover a new technology, and a quote would come up, maybe either from a character within the story or from like Plato or something like that, and it would be read out. And this was pretty advanced English for me.
Yeah.
This was like, it just hit at the right time.
Right.
And it pushed me, I think, I realized only looking back, this video game and the source pushed me into much better English, but also into like philosophy and the sciences and that stuff. Right? It'd be like random quotes from Nietzsche, or it'd be like, quotes from Einstein. Just it was really fun.
Amazing.
And even the characters within it were like so good. Like the capitalist faction, he'd saying something about like, the offset of workers' lives and compared to like returns on this like new spider silk armor or whatever, like because it was also very advanced sci-fi. So the words they were
right.
It hit at a certain time. But then because The Simpsons and this were American products,
Sure.
I was
Amazing.
Americanized.
No, but it's also like so I think if you go into poetry, you have a real sensitivity or awareness of language, of the stuff of language, and the musicality of it. And so when we meet, And so how does that influence you? Like when you write and compose your work, like is it more on the intellectual side in terms of how can I turn up the irony, turn up the
mess with the language more? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have something with language and like everyone I know quite closely knows me as the guy who makes puns. I mean this in the least dumb way, because I feel like usually you'd be like, that is someone I don't want to hang around. Puns are stupid. So cutting out like 90% of like the shitty low-level puns.
Yeah.
For some reason, I'm constantly making little connections with words that sound or relate in some way, and I don't know what.
Like that poem where you're just like the Danish, it sounds like the English, and that you'd make those.
So and I think the poetry kind of comes from there, which is why the main thing I'm doing is messing around with language and finding weird ways to use language or make language do things it's not supposed to, which I think maybe comes from. My mom is an insane linguist. My mom we moved out here because she was the head of the Japanese department, despite being fully Danish.
Okay.
She speaks 15 or so languages.
Oh, wow.
Including Ainu, which is a language in northern Japan.
Oh, wow.
Spoken by the Ainu people, of which there are like sub 100 speakers in the world.
Oh, wow.
And she's like one of the foremost experts in the world. Yeah, so there's some linguistic thing going on in my family.
I need to have your mom on the podcast.
Yeah, she is unable to. She's a little.
Okay.
She's getting on in years.
Okay, got it.
I did at one point have her. I found like a subreddit for the Ainu language.
Okay.
So there's still a few people interested, and I've posted. I was like, my mom is
amazing. So
and so. Like, if you have any questions, ask. And a bunch of random people would ask, and I would like tell her the question, and she would.
Okay.
Right back, yeah, that was really interesting.
So in your work, you're helping kids with dyslexia, I assume sometimes with learning disabilities, and how does your relationship to language influence your, like facilitation to a different mind trying to wrap their heads around language?
I don't know. I can only assume it would help. I can't imagine it would hinder. I don't know. I think that's all I could say there.
That's great.
Yeah. I don't think it does too much in the sense that it is a realm where you need specific expertise and training depending on what you're working with. Right? It's not like you can't just be good with language and therefore better at teaching language. Right.
Yeah.
Go do the academic work and the training and. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Next, I think it's almost been an hour. This has been, each episode is kind of strange.
Yeah.
And kind of unique. This one is.
This is like the grayest I feel I've seen Hong Kong. It's really. Well, it's very washed out right now.
Yeah, we're on the verge of the wet season starting.
Yeah.
So. But you've got the mic. Last but not least.
Yeah. Should we? What was it? You were saying something earlier about interpreting poetry. I forget what it was, but in my head I was like, okay, I'm going to read a poem that essentially is just this. It's a little silly, but it's trying to just be obtuse and not that interpretable, and kind of. It's a little bit trying to make fun of the over temptation to try and find imagery and meaningful connection in everything. Oh, I think it was because the dog. They're like, okay, you picked a photo of the dog in the book, and like symbols have meanings,
right?
And you're not wrong, but so I wanted to write kind of a symbol with no meaning that sounds interesting, and then.
You have to fuck around with a little bit.
Yeah, fuck around with it a little bit. Which is one of the poems that the poetry editor guy was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Which was the point. It's called Mushroom. They dropped a nuclear bomb on Manhattan in 1996, and no one even noticed. But when they rang the sirens a year later just for kicks, the whole world came out to protest. If you're searching for the illusion, gentrification, you already missed it, Christian mysticism, or maybe it wasn't esoteric, war and peace, just non-specific in function, political corruption.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's also one of the poems that I think I would leave, like I've read on the mic, but is more, it's on the page, but performance-wise, it's not going to do as well.
I think it was a great way to end this episode. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, dude. Thank you for having me.
Nice.
It's fun.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.